Speaking of TV, have y'all checked out that new Sidemen like Inside
Yeah, I
show?
watched the whole thing.
I have not
Really?
heard of it once. What are you talking about?
Really? The one on Netflix you watched?
Yeah, I watched the first one too, like a year ago. Um, but yeah,
Interesting.
the one that's been airing on Netflix.
Interesting. I had a friend put me on. Wait, that literally dropped. Didn't like the entire season just wrap up recently? Like I
The
feel like
finale was today. This
okay, and
morning
you
it
watched
dropped.
it.
You're on top of it.
Yeah, because it's been dropping. So basically, okay, I guess I'll give some backstory for the listeners in case you don't know what we're talking about. Basically, the Sidemen last year on their YouTube channel released a show called Inside, which is basically a reality TV show where they have, I think, 12 influencers come in and they compete for a prize fund that starts at $1 million. And basically, throughout the show, they're completing challenges, and you can lose money in the challenges. But also, there's a shop inside the house that they stay in, and you can spend money in the shop, but the prices are crazy. So they're spending like 500 pounds for a soda, or like 2,500 pounds to upgrade their meal, because they get like basic meals every day, like rice and beans or whatever. So it's a really interesting concept. They did it on their YouTube channel last year. They did like the premiere on their main channel, the finale on their main channel, and did like a release every day throughout the week on their second channel. So it's like a whole week's worth of content, and it shows like a whole week's worth of time spent in the house. And that was really successful. I was watching that live at the time. And then I guess they, because of how it was like a proof of concept, they took it to Netflix, and Netflix agreed, and they had a partnership with Netflix. So the season 2 has been airing over this last week on Netflix worldwide and airing every single day. And at the end of this one, which just wrapped up today as of recording, the 23rd of March, they announced in the finale they're coming out with season 1 of the US version. I guess they're going to film that soon. So it's been pretty successful.
No way. I didn't even know that last portion there. Okay, but you were on top of it. What did you think of the overall show? I feel like it gives kind of like it's a mix of a lot of things, but there was I feel like some fear factor in there. Even one of the games, crazy, like literally like a rip off from Silent Library. It's just like it's like a series of game shows plus like you add in the fact that they're all living with each other, and it's kind of like a roulette when it comes to elimination. So what did you enjoy the season, or how did you feel?
Yeah, I really like it. So it's funny you say that, like the ripoff of Silent Library, because basically the concept is that I think there's another show in the UK called Locked In, which like also features a bunch of influencers like inside a house. I think the Sidemen saw that and were like, okay, we can do that better. And then on their main channel, some of the videos they do a lot of game show type videos on their channel, and they've done Silent Library. Like all the things they're doing in these challenges are basically smaller versions of like Sidemen videos that they've done. So Sidemen had done, I think they've done 2 different Silent Library videos in the past. And it's funny because in season 1, that challenge was called Silent Library, if I remember correctly. And then I'm guessing because it's on Netflix, there might have been a rights issue with like the original Silent Library, which I think is actually Japanese, if I'm not mistaken. I'm guessing that's why they called it, like, I forget what they called it in this season, like something with silence in the name, or like don't make a sound or something like that. It's funny that you say that, 'cause it literally is like the Silent Library concept that they've done in the past, but I think they legally had to change the name. But I really enjoyed it personally. Well, the viewers won't know this, but like I watch Big Brother. I like shows like this, like reality shows where it's about competing and social strategy and things like that. And I think this one, the concept is very interesting because you have a bunch of people competing for money that don't necessarily need the money. Not like obviously any one of them will take an extra however many 100K, but you see them spending crazy amounts of money. Like they spent 50K for like a group feast or something, or like 30K for a birthday party. Like it was like crazy stuff. And you can only really get this by throwing in these massive personalities who aren't like desperate for the cash. I think it creates an interesting dynamic. And I really enjoy it. I think they're hitting on something here that could be the future of reality television. Because I mean, sure, the staple reality shows are always going to continue going on, but because this is kind of similar to the charity match that we talked about this in the past, because you have all these people coming in that have followings, there's a built-in audience to watch the show, including like the Sidemen audience. But then you have like Jason the Ween is on this, who's a massive streamer now, Cinna, a massive streamer, DDG, massive YouTuber / streamer, and then those are just the American ones. They have Patrice Evra was on this, Alexi, you'll know. He was on this season, which is crazy.
That's a crazy person to pop up out of nowhere.
It's funny. It was really surprising. And then
I
like
love this game.
Literally, he's spamming that. He was spamming it. And he came in there like, I don't even want to be known as like this Manchester United legend or whatever. Like, I want to be known as a YouTuber. I guess he's starting a YouTube channel. So it's just funny that that they have all these like built-in creators. Most of the creators were UK creators. So I guess that's why they're going to go do the US version. But I think that makes it more inherently successful than these other reality shows, which are bringing on normal people who then afterward, most of those people are trying to take the little fame they have from the show and turn that into some social media career. But these people already have the career. Yeah, a lot of them, they take it and run. I have respect to them. And then some of them, you know, they kind of fade out within a few months and they go back to their day job.
Yeah.
I think it's a successful concept.
Yeah, no, it sounds cool. I'll definitely check it out now.
It's
wrapped up. You could binge it. Yeah, what do you think, Eric?
I was gonna say I'm usually not one to like watch a lot of TV, but I think reality TV is easy because it's kind of like it's easy to binge, right? Like once you're actually hooked onto a show, it's kind of easy to continue on with it. This show, I think I was intrigued because I definitely recognized some of the names. It's interesting. Then there was other names who I was like I had heard of before but wasn't super familiar with. Like I know a few weeks ago we talked about like Cinna and like a little bit of a controversy that she was involved in. So it was, you know, it's just crazy. Like, man, this is just someone we were just talking about now. This big show, and obviously she already had a big following. But it just shows you like a lot of those names will like continue to pop up. We obviously spoke about like the Sidemen charity match recently, so I don't know. It just seemed like, oh man, like these are somewhat like these are individual / topics that I've recently heard pop up in conversation. Like I'll definitely check this out, and it's interesting. Obviously, like you said, lots of big personalities, so I have lots of opinions on the people or the contestants. Patrice, I thought, was a great addition. I think he added such an interesting dynamic, and props to him because most of the contestants were in their 20s, maybe early 30s at the oldest. But for someone to be, as I guess you could say, like someone to be his age and still hold such like a pertinent role in the season and just like be such good vibes and like a well-respected person, like I don't know, he was entertaining to me, and I felt like, I don't know, he brought a lot to the show. So I'm still in the midst of watching it, so haven't watched the finale yet, but it seems interesting, so I'm excited to wrap up.
You seen most of it?
Yeah, I believe I'm like an episode and a half away. No, like 2 episodes and a half from finishing up the season. So like
okay, so you've gotten a good idea of most of the contestants by now.
Yeah.
I won't spoil anything, obviously. But if you had to, I know you mentioned Patrice, but we'll just make this a little mini topic while we're at it. If you had to, and maybe your opinions on them can change by the finale, I don't know. But if you had to pick like your 2 favorite contestants and then your 2 least favorite contestants based on what you've seen so far, who I don't know if you remember their names, but you can describe them too, and I can tell you.
Of course. I'll say 2 people I've been rooting for. Even though Jason hasn't had, what I will say about Jason the Ween, he hasn't been as big of a presence as I expected him to be. I thought since he's kind of on top of the streamer world, like he would be one of the loudest voices in the season. Turns out he's kind of just like in his own lane. I think he'll definitely put on a show for the camera, but I expected someone who like does streaming to kind of be on mode all the time. So I was kind of surprised to see him take a little bit more of a backseat this season. But regardless, there is a moment where, and to not spoil it for anyone who may have not watched it, the Sidemen charity match is referenced as well, and he's involved in that. So I thought that was like a really cool part of the season. That was like probably like a moment that stood out for sure. And someone else who I would say I appreciate is Cinna. I think Cinna has also been like a cool addition as well. She is also, as we've said in the past, she's also a streamer. My one gripe with her, and this applies to a few other people, but like very like people pleaser vibes, which I understand. You want to be on everyone's good side, but sometimes I'm like, all right, man, we don't need tears for everything.
Dragging
But
it.
you know, that's like I'm not gonna really put that against somebody. That's just more so like, man. And I'm naming those two, but had I, because I already talked about Patrice, but Patrice would have been up there had.
Yeah, you can do three. You can do three you like and three you don't like.
Yeah, okay. So Jason, Sin, and Patrice, I'll definitely say I've been a fan of. And then people I am not, PK, I've initially started the season liking the vibe he was bringing. I always like a little villain. I thought he brought on a good little vibe. But I also felt like I don't know. I saw as the season progressed, I feel like a lot of his true colors came out, which I didn't really appreciate. There's just some backstabbing that took place. There's just a lot of like snakiness and like sneakiness that went on, which I was not a fan of. So PK is up there. Whitney, I will say I do know from her Love Island season, and she has really disappointed me, man. I think she had a personality that worked for Love Island because you have someone who's very like blunt and direct. When you're on a dating show, you kind of need that because you need someone to call other people out if they're being a little fake, if they're, you know, just doing like sneaky stuff in their relationship, in their couple. When it comes to something like this, where it's kind of like everybody for themselves, and you have someone who clearly just like is always spending money, spent mad money on a little birthday party, and then try to make it seem like, oh, I did it thinking of y'all. Like, I don't know. It just gave me it just left a very bitter taste in my mouth. And seeing how, I guess you could say, how much she controls the overall mood and like energy of the cast, I was like, she's obviously a very big personality that people follow. I just have not been a fan of the way she's moved. And she also has an alliance with PK and Maya. So I don't know. There's stuff there. And then final person, I said PK, I said Whitney. A final person, man, I hate to do this because he didn't have enough of an opportunity to really, I guess, grow on me. But Dylan, I think everyone kind of got on because they honestly just considered him to be a little bit of a boring contestant. I don't know. I kind of agree with it, but I did think, I mean, I guess this is like a mini spoiler, but it's like at the very beginning of the season, so I don't feel too bad. But like, you know, he really went out in a graceful manner because he ended up, I remember, adding I think 10,000 to the budget before he was booted off. But I think even though I'm speaking down on like, even though he may not have been my favorite character, I also understand in a room or in a cast full of big personalities, you do need more personalities like him that are a little bit more mellow, a little bit more laid back. But those are the three I'll name. How about you?
Yeah, this is some interesting stuff, and I think it's definitely, I think they did a good job with casting because there are people that like you want to root for and people you don't necessarily vibe with as well, and I think you need that on a reality show, like that balance. So I agree with you saying about like Dylan. If I had to pick who I was rooting for, I would say George. Maybe I'm a bit biased because I was familiar with George going into it because he's been in a lot of Sidemen videos. He's like part of that UK YouTube crowd, which I'm kind of tapped into. So I already knew his personality, and I wanted to see him do well, or at least like be entertaining. So I'd say George. I'd say Jason. Jason, I never really watched much of him. Like I'd seen clips here and there, like when he had that big moment where he hit like 100,000 subs or something on Twitch. I seen like clips as he was like coming up. But I never like watched extended segments of his streams or anything. I think after the Sidemen charity match, I started tapping into him a bit more because he's been in London like doing streams out there. And then leading into Inside, I watched a couple of his videos where he was like reacting to the first 2 episodes. I think Netflix allowed them to react to it. And he's kind of been growing on me. Like, not that I disliked him or anything, but I just didn't know much about him or any of that new like phase crowd. I still don't know much about most of them. But Jason recently, I can see the entertainment value in him, and I've been rooting for him on the show. And I'd say third, probably Millie. I have no idea who she was coming into this, and still don't really know who she is. Like, I'm not really gonna go follow her, but on the show itself, I thought she was entertaining, and she seemed chill too, which I liked. Like, especially for the UK. Considering most of these are UK creators that I don't know, other than like George, and I've heard of PK before. I heard the name, but I never even knew what he looked like. But the other ones, like, I just didn't know. She grew on me as like a, I don't know. The way she got along with everyone just seemed really natural, and it wasn't in any kind of cliquey type way. Like, it seemed like she genuinely got along with like everyone, especially with the people that I was rooting for. So I grew to like her. I'd say this.
You sure there was no? Hold on. You sure there was no ulterior motive in your interest in Millie?
No, genuinely, I'm not trying to violate, so I'm not going to say why not. Just genuinely, there's no ulterior motive. I'll just put it like that.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's someone who there's someone who just in the middle. Like, I'd say like Farah, somewhere in the middle. She really grew on me too. Not going to put it in the top 3, but I think it's something interesting. Everyone on the cast says like they grew on her, which is really interesting. They consistently say that because she's super loud coming in, and like her intro package, I was like, oh, this girl looks insufferable. But then actually on the show, she seems like a really sweet girl. So she grew on me as well. And Cinna, this is also my introduction to Cinna. Like, similar to Jason, like I seen clips and stuff. So seeing her on the show full time, I didn't realize, I had no idea what her personality was like. And it's curious what you're saying, like her being kind of a people pleaser. And first of all, also she has like that kind of scratchy, like voice crack type voice. It's like always cracking, which I kind of like, I ain't gonna lie. But on a show like this, I'm saying, like, I don't have a problem with that in general, but on a show like this, it's like hearing that every episode constantly, and it was catching me off guard. I didn't know that. I never heard her speak for like more than 5 seconds at a time. But I do want to get more into her and like that people pleaser versus villain type archetype. But I would say for the people I didn't like, Maya wasn't for me, and it's not because anything she did. I think she gets along with everyone well enough. She seems nice, but she seems to not really have any, like, seems to not really decide anything for herself. Like, she just kind of just like goes along with whatever the people in her alliance want to do. Like, I don't know if she actively made any decisions where I was like, okay, I can see Maya playing. Like, she's kind of just there, always has her finger in her mouth, which really like off-putting to me. I don't know if you noticed that, but once you go back and you continue watching, you'll notice she always has her finger in her mouth, and it's really throwing me off. I don't even dislike her, but it just like, she wasn't a character for me that really did much for me, other than like she has some kind of flirty banter with PK, but she ain't really doing nothing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, which I don't even think she did. He only pointed that out, and my friends and I were talking about this in our group chat. He pointed that out. I didn't really see it. I was like, y'all were like the first 2 contestants to really show up, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, y'all were gonna make small talk with each other. I don't think there was any flirting going on there. It was very clear PK had a crush on her throughout the season. So I was just like, I didn't see it. But yes, I definitely agree with you. I don't think she really didn't seem like she was kind of operating as her own person. That alliance, I really did have a bit of a problem with. Not because it was an alliance, but more so just like, 2 of them were in my in the three that I mentioned I didn't like. So she didn't really seem to, I guess, create her own identity, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I would say to add on to that, I would throw Whitney in there as well. Part of it is a spoiler reason, so I'm not going to say why. I would say continue to watch until the reunion. There's actually a reunion episode that aired today along with the finale. Part of it is that as well, but also in the show, like the comments she made about Dylan in the show that George like had a problem with. I was like, yeah, it seemed kind of unnecessary to talk about him like that, even if he wasn't the most entertaining or like didn't leave the biggest impression. You're kind of talking a little disrespectful on him, even if it wasn't intentional. It was like, it just left a bad taste in my mouth. But she didn't seem like a bad person. She's just kind of annoying, and and I would throw Mandy in there as well. But it's just like for similar reasons, and it's also because they're spending a lot. And here's where we can transition into that, like the spending versus saving, like the people who are the spending police versus the people who are just spending constantly. And it's one thing if you want to spend, but just own it. Like they try to justify their spending, like, oh, but if I do this, like, oh, if I spend 30, I don't want to spoil everything, but let's say like they were just buying stuff in the shop, and then they try to justify it like, oh yeah, I'm doing this for the group, or I'm gonna share my meal upgrade. They're upgrading their meal every single day. They couldn't go one day or one meal eating the rice and beans. Like it's just crazy. And just own it, like just straight up own it. Like that's just the most annoying thing to me. And like, I don't mind. Like season 1, I think it's worth going back and watching season 1. Season 1 has some fun characters, and there's the people who were spending, and sure that's annoying to an extent, but like they were owning it, and it was funny because like at least they make characters out of it. There was like one character named Specs who's like constantly ordering sweets, and he's like or candy we call it, and he's like addicted to sweets. He's like a grown man, he's like 50, and he can't stop ordering packets of sweets. And there's like another guy named Castillo who was like addicted to Fanta Light, and like he just kept going back into the stores like, can I please confirm Fanta Light, brev? And he just kept going back in and buying more and more Fanta Light, and like he wasn't like ashamed about it or like trying to justify his like, oh yeah, this is for the greater good. Like he's like, nah, I just want my Fanta, bro. And he was going and hiding it. Like that's more entertaining. This was like, I don't know, maybe the part where they were hiding it in the gym, like that's something, but it was just kind of annoying, I'm not gonna lie. And just generally the whole, and we can transition this into the spending versus saving, the whole like lack of reality. I know it is a show, so to an extent you have to create content, so I can understand why some of them were like, even though we know this is the wrong thing to do, we're going to spend, because it creates the dynamics that make it interesting. But just some of the things they were spending on, just the like, it was just crazy to me. And I think that's the point of the show. They're supposed to get you upset, but like I said, when they're trying to justify it, then that's when it gets kind of annoying. Versus like, and then there's the others who are like the spending police, like Cinna was spending police. Patrice was not having it, bro. For any spending, Patrice was on their necks. But I like, it was just funny. I say George also wasn't really liking the spending. He wasn't as much of a like on top of them about it. But what did you think about like the whole concept of the show, I guess, with the spending, the shop? Obviously losing money in the challenges, that's part of it. That's kind of standard. But then like the temptations, like things like that, I think it's an interesting concept, and you can really see like the dynamics between those who want to spend and those who don't want to spend, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, I think it's similar to how, I don't know, you kind of, like I said, I had previous introductions to a lot of the cast members, but just seeing like their spending habits sometimes, like you mentioned, left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. It's kind of like, if I had to compare this show to anything, it's kind of like when you're, granted, I didn't experience this much in boarding school. I feel like I experienced this more in college, but when you hang around with people long enough and like you see the way they live, and you're kind of like, man, like I did not know that about you. And I honestly, that shifts my opinion on who you are as a person. Obviously in this context, I'm talking about it in a negative sense, but I know I mentioned Whitney's spending habits. I think you mentioning Mandy was also a really good example of someone who, like you said, didn't really own their spending habits. And I think PK was like a prime example of that too. Like doing it behind people's back, I thought it was funny at first, but then when he kind of just tried to like shove it in Mandy's face, act like Mandy was the biggest spender, and then would go off and continue to like, like buy chocolate and sneak it around. Like it got to a point where I was a little bit like upset by that. And I also understand being around people who are the spending police, that can get annoying, especially when the way they deliver it, it's kind of like, I feel like they have that very like paternal voice. Like why are we spending this much on this? Like, I feel like I see George, I see Patrice doing that. But I would also have moments where I would see Cinna as well kind of jump into that. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, again, character development. I like it. So I understand it's a very tough balance you kind of have to strike. And it seems like they came to a bit of an agreement on what the budget would be, on the daily spending budget would be. But it looks like there just wasn't really much of a follow through or good execution on maintaining that budget. So seeing how much they were spending, they would keep referencing throughout the season, like the reason why people are spending so much is because they're not seeing the physical dollar bills being deducted from the overall prize. They just see it as like fake money and just see it as like numbers on the screen. I thought that was a really good point. So I don't know. I think I was not one to judge someone's spending habits too crazy, but when it came to, hey, I'm doing this for the sake of the group, and it's clearly like, no, you did, like, stop, like you can notice when someone's not being as honest. Like, that's when I think I have a problem with it. So it's like honesty and transparency is really all I was kind of looking for, and I felt like a lot of people really showed their true colors when it came to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think the Monopoly money thing that kept coming up was like, and it was similar in season 1, where like only when it comes down to the end do people really start to grasp that this is actual money. Like once you realize, oh, I'm in the finals, or like this money could actually be mine tomorrow, then they're like, damn, there's only however much money left, and I spent 10K on a goddamn teddy bear or something. I'm like, damn, like that's crazy. Like it only starts to hit you at that point. But at the beginning of the week, where you're like, especially some of the people, they say it in the show too, which really annoys me. Like when they're like, oh, when someone asks them like, oh, you're really gonna spend this much on this? Like you could not spend this and you could win it at the end. They're like, oh, but only one person's winning, and if that's not me, then of course I'm gonna want to spend like 10K on this random thing that doesn't even matter. And like that mindset is probably the most annoying part of the show. But I will say, in defense of PK, and the only reason he's not in my bottom 3 is, for me, he's probably, other than DDG, I'll say DDG as well impressed me with this, is that they're probably the 2 most strategic players of the season. And as someone who watches like shows like Big Brother, like I really appreciate that social strategy aspect, like both being able to play both sides. I feel like both of them were in the best position for most of the season. I'm not going to spoil how it ends, but they were kind of both, like DDD is like with the Americans, but he's also kind of like, I would say that third wheel, fourth wheel with like the PK, Maya, Whitney, Mandy. Like he's kind of, especially when one of them goes out, he's kind of like, if anyone else is going to survive out of the rest, it's going to be him. And I felt like PK was also, he's in that alliance, but he's also cool with Cinna, he's cool with Jason, and he's cool with DDG. So he's kind of playing both sides, and I can appreciate that, especially when you see like the chocolate thing you're talking about, when he plants the chocolate in Mandy's locker. And obviously that didn't actually work out. Like no one believed him that actually is what happened. But then seeing how who he ends up taking out later when he's like sitting with Patrice, and how they're discussing who we're going to take out, and then he flips it into getting out a certain person, which you wouldn't have thought he would want to get out up until that episode, because technically they were in an alliance together. But he was like, he recognized, okay, these 3 people are a strong block, and right now I'm the 4th wheel. But if I can take out this person, now I'm in the strong 3 going forward. And I thought that was a really smart move, that in a show like this, I think right now, because it's only obviously season 2, the strategy side of it is still very much like in its infancy. But seeing how that can develop as the seasons go on is something I'm going to keep an eye on. I'm very interested in that, and I thought that was a genius move, honestly. Like, maybe I don't even know how much people recognize how smart that move was. So that's the reason why I would have PK somewhere in the middle instead of like actively disliking him. But I can understand if that's not as appealing to you as a part of the show, then him doing all like the silly shenanigans does get annoying. I'm not gonna lie.
I see that. I honestly did see that he had also kind of gone on everyone's good side as well, and that's a really good point. I also do, to an extent, appreciate the ability to play the game, because, and I don't want to spoil too much, but you see that there becomes a point where like he no longer is seen as someone who needs to be taken out by the whole group. Like, he kind of falls into the good graces of the entire cast. And one of my favorite moments in the show, or in the season so far, is when he kind of confronts Jason. He's like, why'd you tell Whitney that you should be careful with me? Or why'd you tell, I think that's what it was. And then Jason kind of has this like blank stare on his face, and he's kind of like, you're right, but I just kind of like said that because I just wanted to like like, I don't know, he couldn't really stand on anything, but he was like, I was just saying that, man. Like, I don't know.
I think he didn't realize in the moment. He was just yapping, and I think he didn't realize, oh snap, this is an actual game being played. And PK, I think, was always thinking strategically, even though I think he pretended like he wasn't coming in. I think Jason in that moment was like, oh snap, like if I don't fix up, this could actually get me eliminated. And I wasn't actually thinking that far ahead. I think that's where it kind of the switch flips for Jason as well, which was an interesting scene.
Yes, it's so funny because his eyes kind of widen and he kind of has this little pause. He's like, oh, he just like has no backbone and completely folds.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I understand what you mean. I'm not mad at that. Like I said, PK was in my good graces at the beginning of the season. But yeah, I just, alliances can always be tough, man. Alliances can always be tough, especially when they seem to always they seem to just follow one another, you know. When loyalty becomes like a reason for your votes, it's like, I understand it, but at the same time, as a viewer who is not in the environment, who is not in the cast, right, the loyalty factor can be a little bit of a hard thing to connect with, you know, because it's like, I understand that y'all are friends, but sometimes as a viewer, like, you want the more logical approach of like, hey, this person makes sense to eliminate, so, you know, obviously you should choose that person. But then someone who's very close with that person will say no because they're my friend. So, you know, it's interesting to me, but it's I don't know. I think at the end of the day, everyone has, you see different sides of everybody. You see different sides, and in the end, it just makes for great and entertaining TV. So in the end, you know, it's been a very interesting show to watch.